let's talk about dragons for a few minutes. Dragons are very real beings. We've been led to believe they're fictions, but they're not. There's a reason they're in mythology across the world, and they have different likenesses and personalities and all those sorts of things, because that was actually the case and still is the case. They were very physical beings. They have been very physical beings on other worlds, other planets, and they have shifted into other dimensions. Now, there are some people who talk about them being solely energetic beings. I find it's kind of a mix. Some of them are energetic beings. Some of them are more of a physical existence in the dimension they exist in. So they exist in another dimensional place, like you could portal into, and there's physicality to it, and they are there. Kind of like how we can energetically astral travel to different places from our physical world, they can do the same from their physical world, and energetically through dimensionality experience other worlds. So I've had some that are, you know, energies in the clouds. They shift the clouds. A lot of people see them there. Most of those I've experienced in my life, I've called in. I have a lot of protective dragons. I called them in my 20s using altars. Actually, probably before that, because I had the statues. I got my first dragon statue when I was in New York City. I think it was New York City anyway, when I was in 12th grade. And started working with them because I was really called to Asian culture, and I always wore shirts with dragons on them when I was in high school, like all the time. Always had dragons on me. And they started coming to me energetically. I could feel them. I could see them in my mind. I worked with them. They protected me in snowstorms. I'd often be in a really bad snowstorm. None of my cars ever had four-wheel drive or were really big. They were all small cars. You know, Hondas, Grand Prix, Grand Ams, Sunfires, that type of thing. And when there'd be really bad storms, I'd just be flying through the snow, no problem, while other people were, you know, spinning out, crashing, wrecking, having trouble, all this stuff. Because, I mean, part of it is driving with care, but the other part I've always thought was the dragons, because I would see them around me blowing energy in front of me to clear the path. So I would experience them for years in that manner, and then I started seeing Harold, who is my enormous red dragon, who basically lives with me wherever I go, and he protects my space. He's kind of like my guardian dragon, my guardian angel dragon, sort of, I guess you could call him. I started seeing him in my early 20s and working with him, and just really building a friendship and a relationship. And I can see him clear as day with my third eye and talk to him all the time. And then really the beauty of working with dragons came, not that it wasn't beautiful and fun and magical to work with these, but it was when I went to the desert. When I went to the desert, I didn't realize how many of them existed. We have them out here in the woods and other places, but they're not. There's just something about the energy here. I'm on the East Coast. It's highly populated, and there just don't seem to be as many out this way. But I went to Utah and had experiences where I went into this area, and there are enormous sandstone, I always forget what they call them, but I call them monuments. They're not technically butts, or if that's how, like butts, but how do you pronounce that word or plateaus or anything. They're smaller, and they're like just eroded structures lifting into the sky. And so I camped out there in the middle of nowhere, and immediately when I camped the first time, I could feel there was a dragon. Oh, I need to back up, actually. So before I took this trip, I went into a crystal shop, and in the crystal shop, we found it right before the trip, walked in, and I vibrationally couldn't handle it. The vibration was so strong and intense and paying attention to me that I was getting a headache. I was feeling sick. I was like, it was overwhelming how much dragon energy was in this space. And I told my ex, I was like, there's so much dragon energy in this. I need to leave. Like, I don't know why they're paying this much attention to me. And I was shifting my vibrations really fast because of all the work I had been doing. And there was an amethyst crystal, and she was like, do you want anything? And I'm like, no, I don't need anything. I don't buy a whole lot of crystals or things. I usually find what's meant for me. And she bought one, intuitively nudged to buy one from the dragon, and I go home and I can feel and hear him saying, you'll meet me when you go home. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I can tell that there is just an enormous dragon in that space, protecting that space. So we leave, and instantly everything goes away. Like, I'm not sick, I don't have a headache, nothing. We go back home. She gives me the crystal, and I was kind of like, oh, you bought that for me? And she's like, yeah, and intuitively nudged, and I knew why. We go home, she goes, takes a nap right away. I go into the room, I lay down, and I start meditating by the crystal because I know the dragon wanted to meet. I'm kind of nervous when I do it, and immediately I can feel the land in that shop is about a mile away. I feel him lift off and fly from the shop and then land in my space. And all I can see is a foot in the room and like a leg going up. He is the size of the building, easily over 3 stories tall. Enormous gold dragon, and he puts his head down through and starts talking to me. Tells me how the jewelry store is his shop, is very, very clear about that. It is his shop. The humans work for him and they don't know it, and all this other stuff. That's his treasure that he's selling and that sort of thing. And tells me that I need to take this crystal with me on my trip. I will find dragons. It will bring me to the dragons, to his friends that are out there, his friends and family. And I go, okay. And very interesting experience. And so I'm in the desert, and I completely forgot about that crystal, but I kept it with me. But I forgot the whole purpose was to draw me to dragons. So when I got to Utah, I get out there, and immediately I can feel a dragon inside the sandstone. And I'm like, oh man, I need to make an offering. And so I grab some offering stuff. And the thing about dragons is oftentimes you make an offering of something that is the most valuable thing to you. And that's kind of how you build that relationship. That part of the mythology for some of them is actually true. And I felt that from him, and I was like, okay. So I grabbed some of the most special crystals that I didn't want to get rid of. I had taken a bunch of tumbled stones and shapes and stuff out to offer to them, but there were some in there I didn't want to offer, and I was like, oh, and I had to, so I, it was a sacrifice to me to give them. Took them out. He led me down telepathically to a space where I could throw them between the rocks, and kind of fell down through a hole. And so I threw them in there, and then he started talking to me. And at sunset, I was sitting there by this monument, and the sun's starting to go down, and all of a sudden, he steps out of the monument. And I'm like, I can feel him with my energy. I can see him almost with the corner of my eye. And he's there and starts talking to me. And so as we're talking, he's telling me just to watch and pay attention. And I realize there are dragons everywhere. Each of the monuments has dragons exiting the monuments at sunset, and they come out at night. They come out at sunset, come out at night, and during the day they retreat back into the spaces of the monuments. So it's a very interesting experience to see just across the desert landscape all of this happening. Now, I have a ton of dragon stories, and there's a ton to expand on with those experiences. You can learn more about them in my workshops and other videos. We're at time right now, but thank you for watching. If you're interested in seeing if dragons are around you, remember I do spirit art readings, divine counsel transmissions, and I have Adopt a Spirit where you can adopt a dragon. So check those out on my website, awakenwithwillow.com. Thank you for everything. Love you all.